Have you ever found yourself heart racing, fists clenched, sweat coming off your brow? Maybe you're breathing fast. That emotional surge, the adrenaline, the that thing that just happened, that conversation you just had, the report you just had a conversation about, that call you just got from somebody. The truth is, emotions don't just live in our minds, they also show up in our bodies. And if we don't pay attention, then those signals can get crossed, and we might find ourselves eating when we're not really hungry. And that's what we're talking about tonight. Hey, this is Dr. Dwain Woode. That's Wood with an E. The E stands for endocrinology. Here on the channel, I educate, I empower, and I encourage you to take charge of your health and your life, avoid complications, and go to the next level. I'm talking to adults with type 2 diabetes who want to reverse their diabetes. That's what we're doing here on the show. We're talking with you. We're talking about putting our diabetes in remission. We're talking about getting better in our metabolic health. If you're new to me, hey, go ahead and put new in the comments because I'd love to welcome you with a hand clap and some music, and let you know that we are glad that you're here. If you're new, also go ahead and put a Q in front of any question that you will have as we go throughout the show, because we want to make sure that we get to those and answer them as we move into this space. Hey, if you're new to us, or if you're returning, you know how we do. We've got some monitors that we're going to take a look at here in just a minute. I've got my Keto Mojo and my contour meters over on this side. Right below me, that is my Dexcom Clarity report that we're going to take a look at, see what my blood sugars are, and then get into the show. Get into the show, because we're talking about, hey, how do we reverse diabetes? And we're continuing this week in the COPE model, right? We introduced it several weeks ago. Last week we talked about clarify, and today we're getting into that second component, which is the observe phase. And so a very powerful aspect of the COPE model, and it really kind of speaks to how our bodies are responding to the things around us. If you've not already done so, go back and make sure you watch the episodes that we've done so far in the COPE model, because this sets us up for success as we are dealing with the triggers that are around us. How do we fight that? And we'll come back, we'll talk a little bit more about that here in just a minute. But I do want to hop over and say hello to, I do see some of our community members that are over there. So I wanted to say hello to you guys. Let's see. So we've got Steve is saying hello. Teresa says, hey, doctor and everyone. And then Steve is saying, hey, Teresa saying, hey, Steve. And then, of course, here's Jennifer. Howdy, Steve, Teresa, and Doc. Glad that you all are here. Glad that you're all hanging out with us in this space. Whatever platform you're on, we're glad that you're here. Whether you are on Instagram, if you are on Facebook, of course, here on YouTube, Twitter, well, not Twitter, but Twitch, LinkedIn, all of those platforms, welcome to the show tonight. Just exciting stuff that we're doing. And I've been excited about this conversation because a lot of what is going on around me as I talk to patients, as I talk to clients, as we interact here, the new year, new you process, the new year, new you path is finding places where people are saying, man, I never understood that particular thing. I never understood that that's how my body works. I never understood that that's the reason I do that. And so this COPE model really helps us, puts us in a place to be successful as we're dealing with those triggers. And we'll come back, we'll chat a little bit more about that here in just a minute. But let's go ahead and let's take a look at blood sugars. And here you'll see this is my Freestyle Libre, Libre 3. I believe this is a Libre 3 Plus. Down at the bottom, you see that white line that's kind of squiggly there. And there you see a broken spot there right before about 9 o'clock maybe. That's because my sensor went out and I had to change it. And so that's what you see there. And then for the rest of the day, you'll see that blood sugar going down, 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 down. At the bottom, you'll see that the dashed green lines, You'll see it says down at the bottom below that 15 days. That's because I just changed it today. And so I've got essentially 15 days left. Okay. And then my blood sugar right now is 99. If I go over to my Libre, you'll also see a break in the Libre because right around the same time, believe it or not, my my not my Libre, my Dexcom went out, and so I had to change that. So you'll see right here, there's a break between 8:15 and 10 o'clock. I put one on, and for some reason it did not take, so I had to put another one on. Actually, let me change what I say. It didn't go out, but when I inserted it, I think I put it in on a kind of a bad angle, and so I had it in for 2 days, and it was just irritating the heck out of my elbow. Right? And it's almost like I had gotten a mosquito bite, and it was, I mean, you know how that burns and itches, and I said, okay, I can't do this. So I took it out, and then I put another one in, but when I put another one in, it didn't take, and so I had to put another one in. So all right, so that's what I have, and let's go ahead and let's take a look at my monitors, because I've got a Keto Mojo and I've got a Contour, and so I've got my Keto Mojo strips. Let's go ahead and grab a Contour strip. And of course, the Keto Mojo, as you remember, will give me both a blood sugar and ketones. And the Contour will give me just blood sugar. Just go ahead and do that right now. And I had decided to start my fast earlier. And so, am I going to continue that? I don't know. So I haven't eaten anything since. So right now I would be so I'd be right at 22 hours, 23 hours, 23 hours of fasting. Okay. And I didn't eat anything today. Came home, got ready for the show, so I haven't eaten anything yet. So we'll see. Which is really not how you want to do, right? So you want to have made a decision. Because guess what's going to happen if you don't make a decision? Something's going to happen and you're going to eat. So, all right. So let's go ahead and, so I'm starting over here with my Keto Mojo with the blood sugar. And I'm going to go ahead and open this one up anyway, because remember the last couple of times I had to stick myself a couple of times. I don't want to do that again. So, and then in my trusty little container, let's go ahead and change over to this one. I've got some Lancets. And even though these hurt, I still use them because I get a good drop with them. Let's go ahead and use the same finger. And of course I'm talking, so I hope that Contour doesn't go out on me. So let's get I think we got a good stick. Yep, there we go. Go ahead and get that one started, and then let's go ahead and get the Contour going. All right, so that's there. So 117 is what the Keto Mojo says, and of course the Contour says 93, and then of course the Dexcom, you'll see there, says 108. Let's go ahead and get a strip in. Let me get that drop of blood. See if I can use. There you go. Go ahead and get that started. So, what do you think my ketones are going to be? What do you think they're going to be? Yeah, we'll kind of see that. All right. Let's see. Oh, and look, let's hop back over because we do have another community member that's popped in. So Empower Clinical Weight Loss says hello. Hey. Welcome. Hey Jennifer. Hey Empower. Hey ECWL. So Jennifer says she thinks that my ketones are going to be 0.9. Well, Jennifer, remember I'm only fasting for I guess 23 hours or so. So we'll see. All right. So let's go and let's jump into our discussion for tonight. I'm gonna move this off. So when we come back, you don't peek on that. Peek at the ketones inadvertently. Boom. Okay. So let's talk a little. Let's talk. All right. So you kind of heard me at the top of the show, the opening, and it really was a scenario that I don't know if you find yourselves in that scenario, but I find myself in that scenario often, and many times it is unrecognizable. What I mean by that is that something happens, and before I know it, I'm sitting in front of some Ben and Jerry's ice cream. Like, I don't know where the Ben and Jerry's ice cream came from. I don't know how I got from having a conversation that was annoying or frustrating or whatever the conversation was to Ben and Jerry's. Or I don't know how it got from that to being over at Baskin Robbins, or how it got from that to down at the store eating the Dunkin' sticks. You know, those little Debbie's Dunkin' sticks. I'm not sure. I'm just telling you, those are some things I've heard people eat. Right? Um, or most recently, I don't know how it gets from those things to eating a whole jar of cashews, right? Because just because you are eating healthier foods, you can still get into the same space in terms of eating and buffering. So if you joined me last time, we talked about clarifying, right? So that clarifying step, remember the COPE model. So understanding the triggers and thoughts behind emotional eating. So today we're going a step further, and we're going to jump into how do we recognize what's going on in our bodies and what's happening in the bodies as a result of that. Now, we are talking about emotions, but I want you to understand that the COPE model is not limited to emotions. The COPE model is can be used to handle all of those triggers that we've talked about: the habits, emotions, access, and taste. And so as we walk through, I'll make some allusions to that. But if I don't come back to that, I want you to understand that the emotions are a huge one, but we can actually use the COPE model for so many of the other things that are going on. Okay, so in the chat, if you're out there, and what is your food of choice? What is your food of choice that you go to? What's your go-to when things happen? When you need to get something that's going to calm you, when you need to get something that's going to put you in that space, right, where you don't fly off the handle. What is your what is your food of choice? Okay. All right. So we're talking about the COPE model, and we're talking about the observe. So mastering emotional awareness. Mastering emotional awareness. Well, so the question that I ask, right, and I want you to ask this question as well, is if we know all of the things, right? Because we said we know what causes it. We know why we have emotions. We know why. And I said I don't know why I showed up in front of the Ben and Jerry's ice cream, but I actually do, right? I know because something happened in that space, and as a result of that, the Ben and Jerry's was there, and so that's what I used as a buffer rather than coping. Remember the difference between buffering and coping. So both buffers and coping mechanisms, they both give that quote unquote relief, if you will, but the buffer is not long lasting. The buffer goes away once you have used the buffer. Once you come out of the buffer, because the buffer puts a wall between you and the situation that happens. And once you are through the buffer, once you've eaten the ice cream, once you have eaten the chocolate, once you have eaten the cookie dough, once you have eaten the cashews and the almonds, once you drank the juice, whatever the buffering behavior is, when that wears away, guess what? The situation is still there. It hasn't changed. But the coping mechanism says that I am going to actually be in the present. I'm going to deal with the situation so that over the long haul, I'm better. right? So notice the difference: buffering and coping mechanism. So why are buffering behaviors so easy for us to use, right? So why are they so easy for us to do? And they are easy for us to do because of several things. One is the autonomic nature of emotional reactions. The autonomic nature of emotional reactions. That's a simple way of saying that something happens and automatically our body responds or our body reacts. Let me say that. I'm going to change it from response to react. What does that mean? So there are these parts of the brain, and I'm going to talk about. There's several parts, but I want to simplify it, and I want you to think about a controller that's controlling a device, right? So something up here is controlling a device. Let's get rid of the controller for a second. So there's a part of the brain called the amygdala. Amygdala. And the amygdala is that primitive part of our brain that is responsible for survival and responsible for seeing danger and is responsible for taking us out of danger. That's the amygdala. And the amygdala says that anytime I see danger, I don't need to be thinking, I don't need to be remembering, I don't need to be processing. I just simply need to be acting. So when I see the tiger, I don't have to postulate about whether the tiger is dangerous, whether it was raised in a zoo, whether it's hungry or I just need to be able to get out of there. So the amygdala says, when I see the tiger, I'm going to start running. That's automatic. The higher function of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, is the controller, though. And so the prefrontal cortex sits on top of the amygdala so that when you see the tiger, right, the amygdala is ready to run, but the prefrontal cortex says, hey, look at that. The tiger is behind bars. Notice what just happened. The amygdala is ready to go, but the prefrontal cortex puts reason on top of the amygdala. And so you don't run, not because there's not a tiger there, it is there, but we now have put context to the fact that there's a tiger. Emotions, when emotions get strong enough, when we talked about the roller coaster and when we get to the top, what happens when those emotions get strong enough is they short circuit the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex connection. So the prefrontal cortex is there and it may be doing its job, but the signal that says, hey, there's a bar, the tiger's behind bars, is not getting to the amygdala. So the amygdala simply goes and does its job. So that when you get mad, when you get frustrated, when you get bored, when you get angry, when you get sad, the emotions are so strong that they block the signal from the prefrontal cortex, that reasoning, and all we're behaving out now on is the amygdala. And the amygdala says, if I eat ice cream, I'm going to feel better. If I eat donuts, I'm going to feel better. If it doesn't care that after the donuts wear off, the situation is still there. It doesn't care that you haven't fixed anything. It doesn't care that you're in the same situation. All it knows is that right now, at this moment, I sense danger. Even though it's an emotional issue, I sense it and I need to get away from it. And so the amygdala says, go eat ice cream. So that's what emotions do. So the first reason why buffering is so easy is because there's a short circuit between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. That's what that first one means. Also, discomfort with emotional awareness. So we've gotten to the point where we're not comfortable being in the emotional space. We don't like to feel the way we feel. We want it to be roses all the time. We want it to be sunshine. We want it to be, right? So we're not comfortable in those spaces for whatever reason, whether it's history, whether it's lack of understanding of what those emotions do and how they behave. But discomfort, we're uncomfortable in that space. Also, lack of practice and skill development. So, a lot of managing our emotions, managing how we respond, dealing with the amygdala, being able to maintain those connections has to do with practice. We're going to talk a little bit more about that tonight. But practice and skills. So, you've got to have skills, right? We educate, we empower. The empowerment comes with skills. And those skills allow you to do the things you need to do in the space. Okay, once again, we're talking about why buffering is so easy. The other thing is influence of past experiences. So you may have gone through, had some issue in the past, and you learned this response. And because you learned this response, it's difficult for you to now break the response. That's why there are people who are now 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years old who are responding right now in a way that they learned when they were 8, 9, and 10. Because it's history. That's what has seemingly worked. And here's the interesting thing. For most of us, as old as we are, whatever your age is, we've kind of gotten by, right? If you're 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years, you had to have gotten by somehow. So some of what you did seemed to have worked. And it set up this feedback loop that says, okay, if I do that, I'm going to feel better. Now, the situation is still there. I still have to deal with it, but then I can eat some more again. All right, so notice what's happening. I'm not fixing it, but somehow that behavior from our experience has shown us that, yeah, we can get along. It's not that bad. Yeah, past experiences. And then the mind-body disconnection. Mind-body disconnection. That we are not able to sense how our bodies are really feeling. And we're not able to make the connection with what's going on in the brain and in the body. And we're going to talk about that tonight in this episode. And then resistance to being vulnerable, right? So sometimes we don't want to face. So this is a little different from the problem of this not wanting to be having discomfort. This is not wanting to be vulnerable, right? So we're closed. We don't want to open up for whatever reason. Maybe we've been hurt in the past. Maybe we shared something with people in the past, right? And even with ourselves, we're not willing to be vulnerable because it takes some vulnerability to open up to yourself and say, okay, this is what I'm feeling. This is what's going on. And then there are physical barriers. And this one is a very interesting one because the way we sit, the way we hold our bodies can set us up for difficulty in making the connection between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. So when we're upset, we clench our fists and we sit forward, and we clench our jaws, and all of that puts tension, and it makes it difficult for the brain, the prefrontal cortex, to talk to the amygdala, right? Because our body posture is of such that we're ready for a fight. We're ready to get in there. So lots of reasons why it's easy to buffer. But our goal is to use the COPE model, and we introduced the COPE model. The COPE model is designed to help us recognize, understand, and respond to triggers without resorting to buffering behaviors. And in this case, we're talking about food. But the buffering behavior can be anything, right? So our goal in the COPE model is designed to help us recognize, understand, and respond to triggers without resorting to buffering behaviors or responding to eating. So let's walk through some of that. So number one, recognize. So you have to be able to see it. So you have to be able to see that there's something going on. recognize what's going on. You have to understand it. So when you see it, what does that mean? And then you have to be able to respond appropriately. So we want to move from the buffering behavior to a more appropriate behavior. And this is without food. One of the reasons I love fasting is that during fasting, I don't have to think about food. I know it's silly, but there it is. I don't have to think about food. That part of it is removed. Now, here's the rub. When you don't have food anymore as the buffering behavior to turn to, as in fasting, you've got to either face it or you got to find another buffer behavior. Right? Because you no longer have the buffer. You no longer have that thing that you were using to buffer. So you gotta change. Either facing it head on, or you gotta change, find something else. Okay. So what does it mean to observe? What does it mean to absorb? So emotions don't just stay in our heads. So when an emotion comes, it doesn't just stay up here. It translates into real physical sensations, real physical symptoms, real physical things that are going on. The heart rate goes up because you're mad. You're breathing faster. Your fists are clenched. Your jaw is tight. All of those are manifestations of something that happened here. So in the observe step, our goal is to fully understand the body's physical reaction when emotions show up. There's this movie, and I think is it called? I think it's called Wanted. So Angelina Jolie is in the movie, and and Morgan Freeman, right? So there's this guy, and he has all his life been struggling with emotions. He's been struggling with emotions all his life, and so he's now taking medication to kind of calm him down. If you haven't, I have no affiliation with the movie, but I just like the movie. It's a perfect example of this. And so every time his heart rate goes up, his breathing goes up, every time something is going on, he goes and he pops a pill, and then it calms him down. Well, as it turns out, he encounters Morgan Freeman, Angelina Jolie, and they belong to this group that has special powers. And so they bring him into a situation, and in the situation, he's experiencing anxiety now, right? Just like he normally does. And he's going to grab one of his pills to take it to calm himself down. And the pills, either they take it away or they knock it away or something, and they're asking him to do a task that would normally be impossible for him to do. Actually, impossible for anyone to do, even in a normal state, but they're asking him to do this now in the middle of this anxiety attack. His heart rate's going up, his breathing is fast, he's sweating, all the things that go along with that. And they say to him, you got to calm down. And he's like, I can't because I didn't get my pill. And they force him, right, to accomplish this task. And it turns out in the movie that the heart rate going up, the breathing getting faster, the sweating were all the body's mechanisms for getting him ready to access this power that he has, that he didn't know he had. One of my favorite shows used to be Equalizer, and I love it now that Denzel is in it. Okay, that's my thing. Don't fuss with me. And so when I was listening to how they made the movie, one of the producers said that he has these friends, and they are military, and they say that when they are in a certain situation, that where everybody else is running the other direction, they've been taught, they've been conditioned that they're actually going in the direction of danger. It's kind of like you guys saw the movie Home, right? The Boov, right? And the Boov were always running away, but here was O, and finally he was running towards the danger. So our goal is to fully understand the physical reactions that are going on when emotions appear and be able to do something other than our buffering behavior. That's what the COPE model gives us. So what we want to learn is to identify where and how emotions manifest in our body. And what we want to do is we want to recognize when we're experiencing an emotional reaction and use that awareness, right? So to recognize it, we have to use that awareness to choose a coping mechanism instead of food. So remember, we're making the distinction between coping mechanism and buffering behavior. Okay, some people will say that buffering behavior is an unhealthy coping mechanism. That may be just semantic, but we're making a definite distinction between coping mechanism, right? A something that we want you to do, and we're making a distinction between that and buffering behavior, which is something we don't want you to do. So those are how we're going to be using that. Okay, so steps, and here are the steps that we're going to be doing. Right. So one, we're going to take a deep breath. We're going to scan our body. Remember, we're talking about how are we going to use this. We're going to connect the body symptoms that we're seeing, that we're feeling, that we're recognizing to an emotion. We're going to name the emotion, because when we name it, we take power away from it. We're going to acknowledge the emotion, because emotion is not invalid. It is our emotion. How we respond to it is a different story, but the emotion itself is valid. We're going to acknowledge it. So let's walk through it. So take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. The purpose of taking a deep breath is it initiates a pause. Right? So we're going to talk about the P tomorrow, the next episode. But even here in the observe phase, we're going to take a pause. And when we pause, it activates the parasympathetic nervous system. And this helps to calm the body down. That is the whole idea when they say count to 10 or 12 or whatever the number they tell you to count to. Right? When something happens, you're in a conversation, somebody says something, and you're ready to fly off the handle, then count to 10. Because when you count to 10, what that's doing, it's activating the parasympathetic nervous system. So the parasympathetic nervous system, or the PNS, is different from the autonomic nervous system, right? Sympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic slows us down, and the sympathetic speeds us up. So if we want our heart rate to go fast, that's the sympathetic. We want our breathing to go fast, that's the sympathetic. We want to all the things we see that sometimes are associated with anxiety and stress response, that's the sympathetic. Those are the things that we hear. Those are the things that we see. Those are the things that we are aware of. But there's also another part of the sympathetic system. And this is the calming part. And so when we take a pause, when we take deep breaths, it helps to ground us. It creates a moment of stillness. And during that moment, the prefrontal cortex has a possibility of reconnecting with the amygdala. It's kind of like in the old movies, and you don't see this anymore, right? You know, the guy or the gal, they pass out and they're on the table and they go and they ran and they grab the crash cart, right? And they rub it together and they say, clear, clear. And they go, right? They go, right? So everybody who sees that thinks that what they're doing is they're starting the heart. That's what everybody thinks. Everybody thinks that we're giving this heart energy to start the heart. But you want to hear the secret? We're actually not starting the heart. We're actually stopping it. Oh yeah. See, I'm telling the trade secrets now. So when you give that shock, the shock disrupts the signals within the heart, and the heart stops for a moment. That's why on the movies you'll see they shock them and they go deep. During that time when it was going that sound, we did that. We stopped it. Because when we stopped it, it gives the normal processes of the heart the ability to reconnect and take over again. And so when you're taking that breath, what you're doing is you're basically pausing and saying to your body, okay, here's a moment, here's a brief moment. In prefrontal cortex, I want you to take over. That's what you're basically saying. That I'm giving a moment, a split second for you to try to take over. Because if not, guess what? Amygdala is on its way. It's doing its thing. So how do we do that? How do we do that? We inhale deeply for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we exhale. Well, hold it for 2 seconds. Inhale for 4. Hold it for 2. And then exhale for 4. Inhale for 4. Hold it for 2. And exhale for 4. So do that about 2 to 3 times, right? Because in that moment, in that time, what we're doing is we're trying to calm everything down. We're trying to interrupt the short circuit and saying to the prefrontal cortex, the reasoning, the part that says, hey, the tiger is behind the bars. You don't have to run. We're trying to give it a chance to take back over. Because if not, the amygdala is on its way out the door. Is on its way into the kitchen, on its way into the pantry, on its way down to the grocery store. All right, so number 1, we want to take deep breaths. Number 2, we want to scan our body. Scan our body. And the purpose of this is to identify physical sensations that are associated with emotion. Like we said, emotions don't just stay in the brain. Emotions show up in the body. It's amazing what emotions can do to the body. Now, and emotions can cause you to have a heart attack. Emotions can cause you to develop rashes. Emotions can cause your blood sugar to go up. It can cause your blood pressure to go up. Emotions can manifest in physical disease processes. And so for sure, it can manifest in different ways around the body. And sometimes we don't recognize that. We don't recognize that nosebleed is because you're stressed. That headache is because you're stressed. We don't recognize that backache that you have is because you've been favoring that one side of your body, and you're favoring that one side of the body because there's tension in your shoulders, and the tension in your shoulder is coming from the struggle that you're having at the job. Notice the cascade. So when we're scanning our body, we're observing the sensations. We're observing the sensations. What's going on in my body? And we're observing them without judging them. We just want to notice that they are present. We're not making a judgment about what the headache means. We're not making a judgment about what the tension in the shoulder means. So how do we do a body scan? We start from the top of our heads and we go all the way to our toes. Start from the top of our head, we go all the way to our toes. And we're asking the question, are we having headaches? Is there tension? Are we flushing? Do we feel hot? Is my heart racing if we go to the chest? Do I feel chest tightness or chest pressure? Am I feeling pain there? In my stomach, is it churning? Does it feel like it's empty? Is it tight? Am I having any kind of queasiness? And in my muscles, are they tense? Are my fists clenched? Or are they relaxed? Are they restless? In our In our episode, I think last week, or when we introduced the COPE model, we kind of walked through a body scanning, and we're gonna come back. We're gonna actually do a body scan. We're gonna walk through that process again. But we're scanning through the body. Okay, where am I feeling that? Because it shows up in the body. It doesn't just stay in the brain. Okay, and then we want to connect the body symptoms to an emotion. Connect the body symptoms to an emotion. So the purpose of this is to identify the emotion behind the physical sensation. And this helps you to understand what we're truly experiencing. So um, it is that my shoulders are tense because I'm anxious over whatever that thing is. I'm anxious over the presentation. I'm worried about my child. I'm worried about my relationship. I'm worried about the job. I'm worried about where we're going to get money. I'm worried about being laid off. I'm worried about my health. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to connect the body sensation wherever I'm feeling it to some emotion. And so how do we do this? We reflect on that physical sensation and we ask ourselves, what emotion might this be? What emotion might this tightness in my chest represent? Or the tightness in my shoulders? Or the fact that I'm having a headache every time I go to work in the morning? And there are some common things that we will find, right? So stress and anxiety typically show up as racing heart, as the racing heart, tightness in the chest, sweaty palms, shallow breathing. When we think about sadness, it feels like heaviness in the chest, a lump in the throat. We have low energy. Sometimes we have butterflies in the stomach, particularly if that's relational. When we think about anger, right, we think of heart racing, flushing. We think of our face getting red, clenched fists, tension in the jaws and the neck, right? Our neck veins are standing up. It feels like our head is going to pop off because there's steam coming out. Right? We got to recognize what those are. And each of us will have a different way of how that thing manifests. Now, these are common things that I'm describing, but you may have a particular way that your body responds and how your body manifests a particular emotion. Boredom can be seen as restlessness, fidgetiness, emptiness in the stomach. So the body responds to the things that are going on. And often we don't realize what's going on. The body knows. And so beginning to learn that, hey, when I am frustrated, I start to have, a twitch in my left eye. Whatever. And that's a silly one, right? So now, if that's the case, if you've made that connection, you don't have to have felt the emotion yet. But now you realize, hey, there's something going on in my body. Let me pay attention. Oh, I've got a twitch in my left eye. So I know that when that happens, usually it means that I'm frustrated. So what am I frustrated about? Notice the connection. So we've used the body symptoms to now come into an emotion rather than waiting for the emotion to come. Because the body knows, it senses before it comes here. Remember, because the amygdala is out there and it's surveying, it's surveilling, it's trying to make sure it's protecting us. And so it's always on hyper alert. And then we want to name the emotion. So the purpose of naming is that when we name the emotion, it brings it into our consciousness. It makes it easier for us to manage and respond to it. It's kind of like in certain cultures, right? You don't say a person's name or you don't say certain things because when you do that, it comes into the consciousness. I was thinking of a movie and I can't remember the name of the movie right now. Okay. So naming the emotion helps to detect slight, helps us to detach slightly from it. It reduces the power. That's what I was saying in the beginning. When you can name it, when you can connect it, you steal some of its power. Say, okay, I'm angry. When I say I'm angry, I've taken from the anger some of its power because the emotion wants to be under the surface. It wants to be there just kind of regulating things. But once I've acknowledged that I'm feeling that emotion, I now know it's there. I now know what that emotion is. I now know what's causing it. I now understand how it can cause my body to respond, and I've just zapped some of the power from it. And so, how do we do this? How do we do this? We label the emotion based on the connection that we learned in the previous step. So if it's in the stomach, if it's churning, maybe I'm anxious. If it's, I feel like my heart rate's going up, I'm breathing shallow, I'm clenched fist, maybe I'm angry. If I'm sad, maybe I have some butterflies in it. In my stomach, I have low energy. But I'm connecting those two. I've named it. And then we want to acknowledge the emotion. This one right here. Acknowledge the emotion. Acknowledge the emotion. Oh, sometimes we stick our heads in the sand like the ostrich. So the purpose of the acknowledge is to accept the presence of the emotion without judgment or the immediate need to change it, to fix it, to get rid of it. That's where the buffering is coming in because we see it, we feel something, and we're like, okay, we got to get out of here. We got to fix this. We got to move. The amygdala is ready to go. So the purpose of this is to accept it, that it's there, accept that I'm feeling it, acknowledge that it is a temporary state, and it's not going to last always. I'm not going to be always angry. I'm not going to be always sad. I'm not going to be always lonely. I'm not going to be always tired. I'm not going to be always frustrated. I'm not going to be always irritable. I'm not going to be, right? It's not a always, it's not going to be a forever thing. It changes. Emotions change. So acknowledging the emotion validates your experience. It says that I have this experience. I am feeling this. You may not have felt angry when he said that. You may not have felt frustrated because he did that. You may not have been tired or bored because of that whatever. You may not have found yourself in depression because she did this. But my experience has been this. And it validates my experience. It signals that it's okay to feel emotions and that you do not have to act on it impulsively. Yep. So how do we acknowledge the emotion? Once you have named the emotion, we acknowledge it by the following. Number one, I am feeling anxious, and that's okay. I recognize that I'm feeling angry. Right now, I'm sad. Right now, I'm frustrated. Right now, I'm mad. Right now, I'm whatever the emotion is. Actually, right now, I'm happy. Right now, I'm glad. Whatever the emotion is, we are acknowledging it. We have named it. We know where it shows up in the body. And now we say, okay, it is present. I've said it out loud, and it's okay for me to have it. I don't have to go fix it right now. So your body emotions show up in various ways. Yours may show up differently from mine, and that's okay. But we've got to learn to recognize them if we're going to be successful. If we're setting ourselves up to be in a space where we can be present, where we can learn, where we can see things happening and not buffer and not go eat, right? Then we've got to learn how to recognize these things. So here's some practical steps. Number one, We're going to do a morning check-in. Start your day with a body scan. Start from the top of your head. Okay, how am I feeling? Do I have any headaches? Is there any tension there? Are my brows knitted? Do I feel hot over my ears? Is my mouth dry? Is my nose flaring? Is my jaw clenched? Is my heart rate up? Am I breathing shallowly? Right? So we're going through that process and we're walking through all of that because that helps us. Right? So every morning begin by doing a body scan. And then throughout the day, we want some mindful breathing breaks. So set an alarm on your phone. Let me see if I have. Let's see. Can I show that to you? Hold on a second. Let me get over here. I was trying to find something on my phone, but I've got all kinds of other things on my phone. But on my phone, I have these little alarms that go up. I'm trying to find a day where there's nothing else happening. But I have all these alarms that go off, and the alarm says, am I willing to do what it takes right now to be successful? Am I doing what I need to do for my health? Am I doing what I need to do for my family? Am I right? So it's an alarm that goes off, and I have it set 3 times a day. It goes off. And it's just a reminder, right? So sometimes it goes off and I'm in a room. Sometimes it goes off and I'm off somewhere. Sometimes it goes off, my phone is on my desk. When I come back, I see it. And for that moment, it triggers for me a memory. It triggers for me a behavior. It triggers for me something that says, okay, take a moment. And it may be a split second, but at that moment, I thought about it. So set daily reminders to take mindful breaks. At the end of the day, reflect on what you've been feeling physically and how that connected or related to your emotions. You've heard me talk about bookending. So bookending is the process of doing something in the morning. You have a morning routine or morning ritual, and then something at the end of the day. Basically, we're starting the day with a process and we're ending the day with the process. And that sets the day up for success. You guys remember what bookends are? And let me see if I can... So back here behind me, right, I got some books. See those? Right? And on either ends of them are these metal things, bookends, and they're keeping the books upright. So bookends are those mechanisms that you've put on either sides of your day that keeps your day going well. Okay. And then get some guidance through mindfulness or therapy. Get into a group, join a group, get a coach, get a therapist, get somebody who can walk you through how to be mindful, walk you through the process of being mindful. It takes practice. You're not going to get up and tomorrow all of a sudden, right, you're able to do mindfulness. Because that amygdala has been conditioned to work the way it's working all these years of your life. And then we want to normalize discomfort. Now, I'll tell you, this was a hard one for me. Normalize discomfort. Because basically what we're saying is that you've got to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And for me, for a large part of my life, I was working so I didn't have to be uncomfortable. Right? So I went to school, I got a job, I bought a house. All the things that I did was so I didn't have to be uncomfortable. So now you're telling me I gotta get used to it? Right? You know, the white picket fence, 2.5 kids and a dog, right? Mom, apple pie, and baseball. That's what I wanted. And there was nothing in there about being uncomfortable. That's not what they sold me when I was going through, when I was, getting degrees. They're like, yeah, do all this and everything's going to be great. But we've got to get used to the fact that things happen, that we will have humps and bumps and lumps. And it is possible, let me say this, whoa, 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 hey, it just came. It is possible to do everything right and still have something that doesn't go right. So my son plays basketball, and I remember when he was young, there was a team that they were playing, and our team, the team he was on, executed. I mean, they were in there, they were boxing out, they were getting the rebounds, right? They were shooting, right? They were guarding their man. They were doing all the fundamentals, fundamentals, all the things that we told them to do. They were doing that, and they lost the game, and they were beside themselves. And he said to me, and he was very young. He said, "But we did everything right." Yep. We did everything right. We did everything according to the books. We did everything. We got the job. We went to school, right? We got the job. We studied. We took care of our health. We did all the things that they told us to do, and something still went wrong. It's possible. And so we've got to be able to normalize discomfort to say it is possible that still happens. And because I'm uncomfortable doesn't mean I have to change it right now. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with me. It doesn't mean that I've done something wrong. Life happens. And I don't have to fix it right now. All I need to do is I need to understand that it's having an effect in my body. I can feel it a certain way. It's associated with this emotion. I've named the emotion. And when I name it, I accept it, I acknowledge it, and I zap some of the power from it. So the observe phase or component of the COPE model is a powerful tool for stopping emotional eating before it starts. Remember the roller coaster? Right? So we don't want to get up top here and then try to do it. We want to deal with this roller coaster down here. So the goal is to create a moment of awareness where you can choose a different path. And that's that interrupting that I said, that we pause, that we take a second, we breathe so that the prefrontal cortex can take over and cover the amygdala again and say, okay, we can make a different decision. Take a different path. So next up, we'll be exploring the P of the COPE model: pause, process, and pick, where we'll show you how to choose the best response for long-term success and long-term health. Yeah. All right. So let's see what we've got out there. So, oh, okay, yes, yeah. So I asked the question about what were your go-tos? What were your go-tos? And I see some things out there. Let's see. So hey, Pamela. Pamela's saying hello. I'm glad that you're here. So Jennifer says, hey, Doug. Hey, Pamela. Hey, Jennifer. Steve. So Doug says Chick-fil-A. Hey, let me give Doug a shout out. And let me change my scene so we can see. Here we go. Okay, there we go. So Doug says Chick-fil-A. Yeah, Chick-fil-A is good. Man, those waffle fries, Doug, are, oh my goodness, that's something else. Empower Clinical Weight Loss says chocolate. Yeah, that's a common one for a lot of people. Chocolate is no joke. And in fact, today somebody was asking me about chocolate in the office. Teresa say, hey, Pamela. Pamela White say, hey, Teresa. Empower says, I think about food all the time. Wow. So that's a good place to put a pin for a minute. Food is perhaps the last socially acceptable addiction. And we create these elaborate stories around food. We have incorporated food into almost every type of activity that we can think of on the planet that has absolutely nothing to do with whether we're hungry or not. And so the memories that we have, the functions that we have, the behaviors that we go through, a lot of them revolve around food. Okay? Someone gets pregnant, we take them to dinner. Someone has a baby, and we celebrate with food. If they have a miscarriage, we take them food to console them. If they have a wedding, it's food. If it's a birthday, it's food. If it's a funeral, it's food. When we have our meetings, it's food. Right? So we condition ourselves to have food around all the time. And then now add on top of that, the fact that our emotions, when our emotions come out, the thing that we have learned that puts us in a space where we can function is to buffer with food. So it's already everywhere. Food is everywhere in all of our functions, all of our things, right? Food is there. It's present. We advertise it. We try to convince you to buy it. And when you buy it, we say, hey, you can be better if you get this one. You can be like everybody else if you get that. You can, you're missing out if you don't get it, right? So all the advertising is there. And then on top of that, we have learned over time that when we buffer with food, we feel better. Right? And it's easily accessible. You can drive down the street, and there are stores all over. And in fact, they have huge stores that are devoted entirely to food. It's a culture. I remember I was hanging out with some friends, and I was fasting, and one of the guys said to me, he said, "You gonna eat?" I said, "No." And he said to me, "Hey, don't overdo it, right? In terms of fasting." And I thought to myself, you know, when I was big, I can't remember anybody ever saying to me, "Don't overdo it." But we tell people, empty your plate. You got to eat, right? I can't tell you the number of people who come into the office or number of patients that I talk to that says when they're fasting, somebody in their environment, somebody in their circle says to them, you got to eat something. And I say to myself, and I ask them, I said, why? You're 300 pounds. Why do you have to eat something? But our culture says to us that food is that important. And so for Empower, I can understand why we have such a love-hate relationship with food. And I'll tell you, when in the very recent past, like I would eat breakfast, and I'm thinking about, okay, what am I having for mid-morning lunch, mid-morning snack? And when I finish that snack, hey, what am I having for lunch? And I'm eating lunch, and I'm thinking, okay, what am I going to cook tonight? Right? So it's that thing, always there, always there. All right. So good observation. Thank you for that. Jennifer says, dragging cashews through Nutella. I like that. Cashews through Nutella. All right, so let's hop over and let's take a look. And of course, my clarity report has expired. So let's go ahead and get back in there, and we'll take a look at that. And then we're going to look at my ketones and then go from there. All right, here we go. So this is my clarity, my Dexcom clarity report. This is a Dexcom G7 that we're going to be taking a look at here. And let's see, let's go here. And so we're going to come back, actually not that one, we're going to come back and look at my Keto Mojo in just a minute. But in the meantime, let's take a look at my clarity report. And let's grab this one, this view. I like this view. And you'll see there that my average blood sugar is 122. This is 14 days. And I'm in target 96% of the time, target being 70 to 180. If I change this to, and right here, my glucose management indicator is 6.2. And I did get blood work. So we're going to be sharing that. I got my results. I'm going to be sharing that sometime this week, probably. This week or next week. Let's see. Oh yeah. So that's so the glucose management indicator is a surrogate for the A1C. So it approximates what the A1C would be. If I change this to 90 days, it's probably about 130-ish maybe. Yeah, 133 is my average. The glucose management indicator is 6.5, so a little higher. I'm in target 87% of the times. That's a little lower, and the range is still the same, 70 to 180. If I go over to my daily graphs, and the reason I'm showing you the daily graphs is because I am now 24 hours, 24 hours on my eating, and I think I may, yeah, maybe it may do that. So yesterday, right around here, 114, a little bit of spike there. That was probably some cashews or something that I ate going into the evening, and then been kind of in the morning, one teens, 120s. Early morning we're a little higher, right, 160s. And that probably was just, see how this went up? So what we're seeing that in the morning is probably a result of whatever I ate over here. And then after that, it started coming back down. Okay, awesome. All right, so that is the observation component of the COPE model. Remember, we are clarifying, observing, we're pausing, and we're executing. COPE. And within each of those, we are working to see what do we do? How do we set ourselves up for success? Now, I'm going to say to you, and I want you to listen to me carefully. This does not come automatically. You can't be in the situation and then execute the COPE model perfectly. You've got to practice, you've got to practice, you've got to practice. So times when you are not having any issues, practice, okay, what would I do if? Do some what ifs and walk through the COPE model. Pick a situation that you may have happened where you did not move away from buffering behavior. And say, okay, now let me walk through that with the COPE model. How could I have done that differently? So what we're doing is we're retraining. We're retraining the brain. Just like I mentioned to you, when the military is training, like everybody doesn't show up in a posture where they're running to danger. Right? Our military are trained. People train themselves to do that, so that we can train ourselves to be able to be in the space and to have the heart rate going up and have the blood pressure going up and have the breathing shallow and feeling the palms that are wet. Understanding what's going on in the body. We feel it, we sense it, we identify the emotions, we name the emotion, we connect it, what we're feeling in our body with emotion. We acknowledge it, that yes, it is happening, and it's okay, and I don't have to change it right now. And we're giving pause, we're giving that moment for the prefrontal cortex to take over and for the prefrontal cortex to say, hey, yeah, I can do something different. In all of that, remember that you have the permission, you have the power, you have unlimited ability to create for yourself your destiny, your health destiny. It's at your fingertips. The potential is there. And all we've got to do is tap into it. And we tap into it with the Triple E formula for success. We educate, we empower, and we encourage. We educate with the shows. We educate with the blogs, with the podcasts, all the things that we learn, the theory that we learn. That's with education. The idea is to shift the thought process, change our mindset. We empower with the tools. With the COPE model, there's a tool that we are learning that allows you to put structure. It allows you to put something tangible into what you are doing. Otherwise, it's just nebulous stuff. We educate, we empower, and then we encourage with the community that you are part of, the community that you are building. We educate, we empower, and we encourage. Remember, as we move through our health journey, there are going to be triggers. And the triggers that we have come in multiple forms. When we talk about food triggers, they are habits that we form, emotions, access, taste. All of those are things that will push us in a direction away from our plan, away from what we need to do, away from our eating, away from our fasting, away from our decision to be healthy. So the heat model. And then we want to make sure that you understand that we are working to reverse diabetes. We decrease insulin, we suppress the appetite, and we reduce sugar. Those are the pillars of our platform of reversing diabetes. And then when you show up, call to action is this. 1, join the challenges. Don't just be out there. Don't just let the challenges go by. But you want to make sure that you're jumping in and you're getting in there and you're doing the things that we're talking about. Because by the end of, not by the end of, but we want to put the things to practice. Don't just let the show happen and go off air and, okay, well, that was a great show I listened to. But no, you've got to put this into practice. Yep. And then we want you to share your story. When you come, tell us what the story is. What is it going to be? What's happening in your body? What's happening in your history? What's happening in your community? What's happening around you? What successes are you having? Yeah. And then invite a friend. Share the link. Share the story. Let them know this is a place where they can come and they can be successful. Yes? Awesome. All right. And so for this month, every month we have our monthly challenge. And so what I want you to do for this month is going to be to find a week, and I want you to you want to commit to have 3 mindful check-ins per day with yourself. 3 mindful check-ins per day. I know. All right, so set your alarm. And it doesn't have to be like a whole hour, right? It's 2 minutes. Just set the alarm and say, okay, hey, I'm going to check in. Hey, I'm going to check in. I'm going to check in. I have one alarm set at 9 o'clock in the morning, one set at 2 o'clock, and one set at, I think it's like 4:30. So that's your challenge for this month. Begin getting into the habit of doing that. Every single day, you wanted to work on that. Okay, mindful check-ins. That's your commitment for this month. Hey, I'm so excited that we are continuing in our process of learning what we can do to put our diabetes in remission. You are an amazing community, and I'm glad that I get to spend time and hang out with you. We will be doing some check-ins later this week, and then we'll be back on Saturday night for Video from the Vault. We'll do our This Week in Review Sunday morning at 6 a.m. Central, and then we'll be back in the saddle right here for Dwain Woode MD next Monday at 7 p.m. Central. Thank you for hanging out with me. Thank you for being out there. We'll see you when we see you at our next show. Good night.